Hello and welcome to this review of Prince of Thorns by Mark Lawrence. So I listened to this as an unabridged Harp Audio, I think it was Harp Audio, was it audio? Oh, an audiobook anyway. So I don't have a volume to wave around, and that's a bit distressing. I normally do that. But actually holding a physical book and waving it around reminds me of what's in it in some strange mystical way. Anyway, Prince of Thorns by Mark Lawrence. Goodreads tells me that I've never read any Mark Lawrence before, and I believe Goodreads because it has better memory than me. I don't think I'd actually heard of him exactly. So there was a period in my life where I read more fantasy and epic fantasy than any other genre, but that was a while ago, and I've sort of gravitated back to science fiction and especially classic science fiction. So I hadn't actually heard of Mark Lawrence. I do occasionally venture into ones. I think I read the trilogy by Mark Anthony. I've definitely read some Joe Abercrombie. But the whole modern thing about epic fantasy with volumes that go forever sort of passed me by. Wheel of Time, Game of Thrones, whatever. I do enjoy a book that starts and finished. And with fantasy, the notion is usually to create a character and a world so epic that it keeps going forever. And I will admit that I occasionally lose patience with that. Not with Prince of Thorns, however. I've just finished it and I plan to go straight on to the next one because this was really brilliant. I enjoyed the hell out of it. And I'm very glad to whichever booktuber that recommended it to me. I've forgotten who it was. I saw their review. I need to start making notes of these things, but I didn't hear. Because it was audio and I was listening to it in the car a lot, I also didn't make many notes about it while I was listening. But what I do know is that I had a UK version that was narrated by Joe Jameson. Probably Jameson. And wow, what a fantastic job. He has this cool, light, I suppose it's a tenor voice that he manages to do an almost emotional delivery the whole way through. And this is perfect, absolutely perfect for our main protagonist, the Prince of Thorns, as described, one Jorj Ancraft. So he was the prince of a future scenario, and we've got these hints that it's a post-apocalyptic one. Possibly the UK, not really sure. I get a UK feel from it, but whatever. There were definitely nuclear holocaust in the background. There's some nuclear waste in one of the castles he visits, and a computer actually appears at one point. But in this future scenario, we've got an area that used to be an empire, but is split into a whole heap of different kingdoms. Jorj's father is a king. But we don't start there. We start on the road with him, where Jorj is in charge of a band of his brothers who are basically cutthroats, thieves, murderers, and bandits. They scour the countryside, and when this story begins, they are sacking it and putting to the torch a town, and it is brutal. This is absolutely not a book for you if you need any trigger warnings about violence or sexual assault. Just assume they're in there. They probably are. And the narrator's voice perfectly encapsulates Prince Jorj, who is completely immoral. He's very young. We find out early on he's 14 years old, and he left his father's castle when he was 10, and he's in charge of this band of brothers, road brothers, and the things they do are horrific. And the fact that Jorj has absolutely no emotional investment in them, he appears to have no morality, he doesn't appear to object to anything, however terrible. He comes across as a complete sociopath. Throw the DSMV whatever at him and nearly every page will land. And it's kind of fascinating to watch this level of amorality in someone who is so young. And I think having Joe Jameson narrate it made that more so for me, because I feel if I'd have been reading this book and the voice inside my head had been talking rather than a narrator, I think I would slowly have made Jorj seem older and older, because the actions that he's taking are not those that you associate with a child. Okay, so Prince of Thorns gives the backstory in flashes of now a few years back and forward. This is a tactic that I personally do not like, and it's one of the tactics that put me off a lot of epic fiction. Most epic fiction, not Robin Hobb perhaps, but many of the other ones. Certainly not J.R.R. Tolkien, blessed be his writing forever. But a lot of fantasy does require this jumping around from person to person and the jumping forward and back to make background. I don't love it. In Prince of Thorns, I do love it, which is really unusual. Sometimes I can tolerate it, but I really love it. Here, I think it's the perfect way of building Jorj. Because if you started with Jorj in that burning village and moved forward, you wouldn't have the same depth and the same weirdness. You wouldn't have the same questions to ask, and you wouldn't have any way of answering them. So you found out about Jorj and the members of his band, one of whom followed him from his father, the king, who's a fairly main character, Macon. At least it sounds like Macon. That's the disadvantage of listening rather than reading. I don't always know what the names are, etc. So Prince of Thorns came out in 2011. And I still hadn't heard of it. It was nominated for a Goodreads Award. Don't know if it won or not, but whatever. So good. It captured me from the start. It never let go. There were one or two events in Jorj's experience when he comes back to his father's castle, for example, where he seems to be hemmed into a corner, and I sort of hit the pause button where I don't like this. I don't like where it's going. I don't think this is going to end up well. Every single time. Every single time Mark Lawrence pulls it out of the corner that I thought he was writing us into, resurrects it. This is fairly non-stop action and fairly non-stop violence, but it is fascinating, and it's just such a complex world. This is one of those examples where an epic fantasy finishes its first book, and I want nothing more than to go back on to the next one. So thank you to whichever booktuber flagged Mark Lawrence for me. I don't think they actually recommended The Broken Empire, of which this is the first book, as the first Mark Lawrence to start with. It just happened to be the first one in the library. Very glad about that. I have enjoyed it thoroughly. I'm going on to the next one. I've got a long drive tomorrow to work. I'm actually looking forward to the drive. Traffic and all. Bring it on. Because I'll have this marvellous audiobook, hopefully narrated once again by Joe Jameson to listen to. Yes. Do thoroughly recommend. Bit of a different book for me. Really enjoying the change, actually. I think perhaps I needed a bit of a, not a break, a palate cleanser from all the classic sci-fi I've been reading. I can't think of a better one. Thank you very much for watching. If you have read Prince of Thorns, I'd like to see what you think about how the next two books go. I'm looking forward to the next one, don't get me wrong, but one of the things about epic fantasy and trilogies is that second book slump that can happen. Fingers crossed it doesn't happen here. The writing and the narration certainly suggest to me that it can't, so let me know if you've read them. If you are fond of Mark Lawrence's authorial style of his writing, let me know which other series I should consider. I'm enjoying this writing enough that I might actually go out and buy physical books for this one, even though I've got to say epic fantasy isn't one I tend to reread a lot, but I enjoy this enough that I might even buy physical books. And let me know which other series by Mark Lawrence you think I should consider when I finish The Broken Empire, which might not take me that long. Thanks for watching. Do the algorithm things if you want to, but in any case, read books, because books are amazing. Life is better with books. Your brain is happier with books, and books are just great.